As many of you know, I didn't get my start in ministry. I got my start in clinical and health psychology. I went to the University of Florida and worked toward a doctorate for a couple of years. My mentor professor at the University of Florida had a life goal of bringing crime down in the city. And the way that she was determined to do that was through dealing with children who were 3 to 6 years old with extreme behavior problems. So she would have studies of 100 participants, 100 families, 100 kids, and she would bring them in and she would do what's called PCIT. She was the founder of Parent-Child Interaction Therapy. And these children would go from oppositional defiant disorder, conduct disorder, which is basically kind of like a pre-sociopath in a sense, pre-antisocial personality disorder in adults, or ADD, ADHD. And after training parents to be play therapists for their children, these kids were just wonderful to be around. It was an amazing life transformation. And they were no longer diagnosable, even for things like ADD, ADHD, conduct disorder, and oppositional defiant disorder. She literally was saving the lives from a societal perspective of these children. There were a few things that I took away from that experience. The first was that out of 100 families, typically well over 90% were single-parent families or grandparents, aunts and uncles, or foster parents raising these kids. Dad was basically out of the picture in almost all of these situations. When we look at these school shootings and we see the profile of the people who typically do these things, they're typically from fatherless homes. They don't have an example. They don't have someone there who is showing them how to be a man, how to be a responsible member of society. Their model of what it means to be a man is to be absentee, is to be out of the picture, to be irresponsible. That's what they know. And so they don't have a same-sex role model within the home to train and teach them through example and through instruction of what it really looks like to be a man within society. I believe in the study that came just before I arrived, it was like 98% were fatherless homes. That is one of the pieces that gets left out of this conversation, just so frequent, is fatherless homes. We have completely tried to neuter and destroy the nuclear family, and that's going to reap consequences. That doesn't mean we need to guilt people or shame people who don't have intact bio mom, bio dad within the family. There are bio mom, bio dad with kids in the family that are just doing horrendously. There's abuse and things that take place, sexual abuse, physical abuse. I mean, these things certainly happen, but by and large, from just a general overview, a general way that things operate, it's pretty healthy to have intact home, mom and dad, both in the family, opposite sex parents raising kids to show them how to interact in the world, how to get along with same sex and opposite sex people, and to be a role model of what it means to be an adult, a man, or a woman in society. But we're seeing this problem in these mass shootings in our young men, and that's particularly troubling. And so we need to look at these situations and say, what are the commonalities? The commonalities is they're raised in fatherless homes and they have no example. Another thing that is common to these people is they're being discipled. And they're not being discipled in the ways of Jesus, they're being discipled in the ways of the world. And they're into violent video games. And years ago I would have said, oh, that's not even a thing. They dehumanize people. They objectify people. Even the zombie games and the zombie television shows are kind of like one step away from people, but they're still people. And what we're not training our young people in is that human beings, that people are image bearers of God who are filled with worth, God given from their Creator, that are to be respected, that are to be appreciated, that are to be cared for, to be shown kindness, love, and mercy. And so I can't help but think that these people who are doing these horrendous acts of violence are people who have been discipled in the ways of the world and the culture of the world, because let's be honest, we also have a culture not just of objectification through very specific training that's coming through media, through social media, and through video games that dehumanizes and objectifies people, that people are to be used for your own pleasure through violence or sexual lusts and things like that, that we have completely objectified our society and then just acted like, everything's going to be okay. There will be no repercussions or consequences of a society like this. Well, guess what? There are, and we're seeing it. And what we want to do is we want to boil this down to the symptoms rather than look at the real problems. And so we look at symptoms like guns and things like this. And, we can certainly talk about that. And there's room to talk about that. What are realistic gun laws? There actually are already quite a few of them. Anytime someone does these things, they break a number of them. Is there a need for more legislation, for more rules? We need to talk about that at some point. But my point is that we often talk about the symptoms rather than the actual underlying problems, which is these people have serious issues that come from specific circumstances that actually need to be addressed. They're being discipled by the world. They're living in fatherless homes. And what my mentor professor at Florida didn't understand was that, yes, you can change a life through behavior modification, through cognitive behavioral therapy and all those things. That's great. It's actually a blessing. It's wonderful. It's good, but it's really not enough. What people truly need is they need Jesus. They need to be discipled in the ways of Jesus. And if there's anything that the church needs to kick us into high gear on evangelism, it should be these sorts of situations where we look at our world and we say, if people had Jesus, they truly would not act like this. There are people who have claimed Jesus and acted like this, but they have twisted the gospel. They're not true disciples. We need to be discipling people in the ways of Christ, through the love and mercy of Jesus, the mission of Jesus, the message of Jesus, because you do not see people going around doing these things who understand that the people in their world are to be loved and respected, to be treated with care and dignity because they're image bearers of God. We need to move to evangelism. We need to move to discipleship. We need to move to life transformation through the power of the Holy Spirit. That's the missing piece in all of this. We have to have a different culture, a counterculture to the culture of objectification, violence that leads to fatherless homes, that leads to children who have lost their way, who grow up into adults who've lost their way. And when you become an adult who loses their way, there are force multipliers that can take place that can make the impact of such a life far more drastic, far more dramatic on the lives of people around you, because now you can drive a vehicle, now you can purchase a firearm. So we need, as men, to step up and help the other men around us, help our own children to grow up in the ways of Jesus, to disciple them, and to go out and evangelize the world, to find the people who need Jesus, to bring them to Christ, to help them to be able to get through these things and to regulate emotion, to be spiritually minded, to be spiritually mature. This is the missing piece in these conversations. And until we talk about that, and until the church moves to mission, evangelism, and discipleship to change the lives of our community, like my mentor professor at Florida was like, I'm going to change this city. I'm going to bring down crime in this city through behavior modification, through cognitive behavioral therapy and PCIT, parent-child interaction therapy. It's like the church needs to have a vision like that. Like, can't the church have a vision to change the community, to change the world, to change crime in the world by evangelism, through discipleship and the message and mission of Jesus, by imitating Christ in our own personal lives, by discipling our children and to be parents who are present? This is the challenge of the church in the world today, and we need to step up to this challenge. We are so afraid to make changes. These are some changes we need to make, and we need to help each other and encourage each other in making these kinds of changes, because until we do, we're just dealing with symptoms like, well, we need more metal detectors, or we need more security guards, or we need more firearms legislation, or we need more X, Y, and Z. We're dealing with symptoms because you're not changing hearts by adding metal detectors. You're not changing hearts by adding legislation. Does that mean none of those things should ever be discussed? No, of course not. We should discuss all of those things, put them all on the table, discuss every last bit of it, but don't miss the root problem is that there are evil hearts of people who have been developed and discipled over time through the world, through media, through social media, through violent video games, through lack of fatherly guidance, through absentee dads, because the fathers were not discipled, because the fathers didn't know Jesus, right? And so these are the kind of things that we really need to address in our churches. We need to be open about having the conversation. We need to be serious about making the changes, because people are all up in arms about the kinds of changes that someone else needs to make for us. Congress needs to do this, or these people need to do that. But what about us? Where are we in this equation, and what kind of changes are incumbent upon us to make in this world, to make this world a better place by recognizing the image of God in the people around us, to not objectify people, to raise our children in faith, to disciple them in the ways of Jesus, etc. You've heard it already, don't need to repeat it, but this is our challenge. Are we up to it? I sure hope so. I'm going to do my best to dive in myself and not just put this on other people to do the job for us. Church has been doing that for far too long, where we rely on the government to take care of the poor and take care of the homeless and, legislate the heart somehow. Well, it doesn't work. We've already seen it doesn't work. So that's the message for today. If this helped you in any way, please hit that like button. Let YouTube know it's working so it shows it to more people. And if you haven't subscribed, now's the time to do that. Let me know what you think in the comments about this. I'm definitely up for healthy dialogue on it. Take care.